everybody. I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Booker T. Washington said, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome." Well, on today's episode, we talk about overcoming obstacles, growing up on the outside, identity, the power of stories, and more. My guest started from bottom, from being homeless as a kid to dropping out of high school at 14 and lacking confidence. Today, he's a husband and father of two, producer and co-host of the music podcast Broken Record with writer Malcolm Gladwell, New York Times editor Bruce Headlam, and music producer and Def Jam co-founder Rick Rubin. And he's host of his own podcast, Started from the Bottom. Beginning his career as an intern for the Tavis Smiley Show and Smiley and West, he later became a producer for NPR's Morning Edition and its accompanying podcast, Up First, before becoming an arts reporter for NPR. Please welcome the hopeless music nerd himself and the man who's showing us that we can beat the odds while also beating away the feeling of being an imposter, Justin Richmond. Justin, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Jay, thank you for having me, man. You know, you made me sound like I'm really somebody to listen to, man. I've never felt more flattered.
Well, it is my pleasure, and that just scratches the surface. And I'm so excited to dig into this conversation today. So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
I thought a good starting point for us would be for you to share with our audience what your favorite personality trait is about yourself.
Oh, wow. My favorite personality trait about myself. I've never thought about this, Lord have mercy. I would think that my favorite personality trait about myself is that, I would like to think I'm a good listener. I'd like to think I listen to people and not just hear them, but, really synthesize what they've told me and processed it in such a way that I can, perhaps in some way that doesn't compromise who I am, provide something of value to them,
Ah, beautiful. Well, clearly the type of work that you do and what you're doing today, that personality trait bodes well for you, being able to listen well, being able to synthesize and ask good questions. That's outstanding. So, I would love it if you would share with us a bit about your origin story. And while you're doing that, if you could highlight maybe some of the key lessons that you learned early in life that have helped you become the person who you are today.
Yeah. One of the biggest one of the things I think I did not believe early in life, that it's taken me a long time to realize that the process is for me too, that there's a process, that it applies to me, and that I should trust it. In other words, that there's real steps you can take to, become a self-sufficient functioning human being in the world. Like I said, as a kid, I used to often think to myself, like, I'm gonna live on my own one day and have my own place and maybe have kids and have bills that I'm responsible for handling and paying, and have a job that I report to and write reports maybe, or what am I going to do? Like, what is, like, I couldn't imagine what it might look like or how it might feel, and how at any point I might ever become, a full enough human being to accomplish those things. It seemed so far off and foreign to me. And, I think that mixed with a couple of just, events led to me having like a lack of confidence. I didn't believe that the same rules applied to me. I thought I must just be, it can't apply to me. How could it apply to me? Look at, And sure enough, as I've gotten older and I've accomplished, things that I didn't ever dream of accomplishing, I realized that, in fact, the same rules apply to me as apply to anyone else, which is, work hard, um, sacrifice, uh, in the process of working hard, sacrifice a lot, quite a lot. There's going to be times that you want to go somewhere or do something or let loose or maybe pump the brakes a bit, but if you just kind of stay focused and stay working, man, like there's a real payoff.
So I want to stay on the thread of your early life before we turn the timeline forward, because there's so many aspects of our childhood, so many aspects of how we were raised, and some of those key lessons and beliefs that we had. And sometimes those beliefs obviously come from other people, right? Or the environment that we grow up in. So I want to stay there for just a couple of moments, because you spoke about belief, and you spoke about something that you didn't believe was possible for you at the time. And there were a couple situations that maybe shook your confidence level. Give us an example, if you will, of a time when you were young where you didn't have that sense of confidence that you have today. What was it that you feel held you back? And then we're going to talk about how you were able to turn that around. But first, let's stay on why you had that lack of confidence.
Yeah.
And some examples that we can use for context.
Yeah, hard to say, why, I'm not sure. It was just like it was just there. But like I can certainly think of, certain events over the course of a lifetime. Like I mean, I remember I remember my high school, my freshman year of high school, my Spanish teacher, you know, uh, telling me that I'd essentially be essentially the most I could hope to be when I grow up is likely like a trash truck driver, you know, like verbatim. That was pretty much what she said. And by the way, not a bad job to have, mind you. I didn't know it at the time, but I definitely took it as an offense. Like, like why would you what gives you the grounds to say that? But she didn't. She sort of saw me as a failure. I don't think she saw me as ever amounting to anything. Similarly, I remember just weird things. Like I remember entering a photography competition as a kid and getting disqualified because they thought they thought I didn't take the photograph, but I knew I took the photograph. I took that photograph. That was I was there. I can remember seeing the flower, liking the flower, taking the picture, continuing on with my day. And then when this competition came up, printing the photograph, submitting it, I think I want to say maybe I was like in fourth grade, fifth grade or something like that, getting disqualified. You just feeling like, wow, like just, there was a level of what I perceived as unfairness sometimes in the way I experienced certain systems, whether it was the schooling system, primarily the schooling system. Yeah, I would say so.
So when you dropped out of high school at 14, was this a decision that you made for yourself? Was this a decision that was made by your family unit at that moment?
It's a good question. So, I went through my freshman year, and my recollection was always, and I just recently pulled my transcripts and had it confirmed. So my recollection was always, and again had it confirmed, that my GPA was essentially less than 1.0. It's in fact true. It's like 0 point something. So they were telling me that I was gonna have to go to a continuation school, which I believe they have those across the United States. Those are essentially schools where you go if you're academically academically not up to par, and and maybe even if you're a bit troubled in terms of the amount of demerits you've gotten, etc. And so it's kind of like my mom viewed it as like the step between, a school and jail. She's like, you're going to be on the jail pipeline, essentially going to there. And she wasn't really happy with that. So her feeling was, well, you can't go there. And I said, great. Yeah, I can't go there. Right. And then so we set up like a homeschooling type of program, but, I essentially took advantage of that, was for all extents and purposes, not enrolled in much of anything between, July of 2004 and April of 2005.
So in researching you and trying to get as good a handle as I could on how life started for you, some of the challenges that you faced, how you were raised, my understanding is that your parents weren't married and your father was around for a short period of time, but you were raised by both your mother and your father separately.
Yeah. Yep.
And so with the outlook that you had on life and with some of the things that you were experiencing at this stage, which is such a critical stage, right, in our lives, formative years. And you have a Spanish teacher as an example who is not painting the most optimistic picture for you about what you can accomplish in this world. And there were other things that were happening as well. Were you having these conversations with your mother and father and sharing what was going on in your mind? And were they either providing an alternative look on what is possible for you? Were they encouraging you? What were some of the things that you were learning from them?
I would say in their way, they were definitely encouraging. I mean, like I would say that they both had confidence in me. What they felt that could lead to, though, I'm not 100% sure. Like, did they imagine that I might, like, I think parents also, for instance, have a level of fear associated with their, like they want certain things for their children. And so they want to see them in certain careers and they kind of want to see them have these stable lives. And, being a journalist, for instance, it's not the most stable, livings that you can kind of get into, especially as we're finding out, man, we're about to be replaced by Chat GPT and other AI. But, so yes, they had confidence in me, but, but to degree, and I'd say the other bit of that is like, you love your parents. And I'd say this feels like true of a lot of people I've spoken to, and you appreciate the confidence and the belief that they have in you. But there's a bit of, well, you're my parents. Of course you do. Like, if that's not being reified by the outside world, then it's sort of like, well, what good is your belief? Of course you're biased. Like if I'm not really seeing that reflected back to me outside of the household, outside of my family unit, then it's like, I don't know, this is so true, how can this be trusted? So yeah, it's weird, but thankfully at least they work, because it provided me a place to feel some level of understanding and feeling like I was understood and some level of comfort,
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So let's turn the timeline forward a bit.
Yeah.
And so now you left high school, you went into a homeschooling type program that you mentioned that you had taken advantage of. So how do you go from where you started to enrolling in college? So you start at a community college.
Yeah. Started at a community college. So, by the time, like the new year of January 2005 rolled around, I just realized, when I thought about the sacrifices, my parents made, specifically my mother and my grandmother made, in raising me and giving me great opportunities, a great shot at a good life, I felt like I wasn't respecting the opportunity they gave me and the foundation they gave me. So I felt I owed it to them more than even to myself to to get a bit everything I had, right? And so I realized, look, I got to figure this out. And so if I go back to high school to try to figure that out, it's like, look, I already had the 0 point something as a freshman. I've now missed half a year. I'm a year and a half behind. It's a 4-year thing. I'm like, this is going to take too long, you know, and it didn't work for me anyways, you know, and I'm not going to go to continuation. It just doesn't feel right. So I realized that if you were, I realized that I could enroll at a community college essentially. And I'd missed enrollment, but there was like an 8-week expedited, you know, series of courses for the second half of that spring semester. And I enrolled in my first 2 classes were American history from 1865 to present, and an interpersonal communication course. And I loved both. I loved both. I aced the history course, and I think I got a D in the interpersonal communication course. But, you know, the A, I enjoyed the interpersonal communication course. I just wasn't quite ready, you know. But the A in the history especially showed me like, all right, I can do this. And this is, I think, a better setting for me to learn in, you know. And so I kept going. And then I took a poli-sci course that summer. The next, you know, fall, I took another poli-sci course, and that started to become, you know, a philosophy course. And I started realizing, oh, what is it that I started developing a love of learning, you know, a real love of learning, and my curiosity was being satiated in a way that had not happened, you know, prior to that. So
Yeah, I love that. So also at this point, do you start to feel that your confidence level is beginning to grow and that you can see a different path forward from what you had seen prior to?
small, but yeah, like in just in all the important ways, in all the right ways. You know, it's not like I my confidence grew by leaps and bounds, but certainly it you know, when you're on the ground, when you're on the floor, it's like, you know, it's like, all right, any little bit of movement up is good, man. Like, so it's like, you know, there's a little, I could sense a bit of a shift. And I at least saw a path forward for the next few years. I knew like I can stay here the next few years and do this, you know. Let me go. And then I went and I got a job at a movie theater. So like, let me try to be as productive as possible. You know, then I would also just go spend time on college campuses. I'm at UCLA now. I come here, UCI, just different places, and try to like just soak in the environment. Try to imagine myself at a place like that. And it was hard. I couldn't, but I would try. I just realized like if I spend enough time around these places, like this could be me, perhaps, you know. And so that's the way I started to think about things. Like I wanted to put myself in the best position to continue to grow my confidence and pursue my education. You know, I was really had a thirst for learning at that point.
That's outstanding. So let's talk
Yeah.
about what you just hit on, which I think is an important topic, and being in proximity, right? Being in an environment that challenges us to think differently, challenges us to think bigger, challenges our own beliefs and our biases and our own self-identity.
Yeah.
So speak to the identity aspect and how important it was for you to put yourself in these environments, and how did it change the way that you began to look at yourself?
I think, you know, you can't, I don't, you know, I can't stress how important I believe it is to be around the kinds of people you want to be. Like your parents tell you that, but when your parents are telling you that, one, you don't believe them because basically you don't want to hang out with the kids they want you to hang out with. And two, it's sort of like when your parents are telling you that when you're growing up, it's more about it's a bit of a, you feel like there's like a moral judgment implied in what they're saying. Like, well, that's a bad kid. You want to be around that kid. But, you know, as you get older, what I've realized is it's true. And you don't have to, there doesn't have to be any judgment levied. It's not like these are the people I don't want to be around. It's literally find the people you want to be around and be around them. but also really evaluate, why is it I do want to be around these people. I want to be around these people because they, what I started to realize was like, I wanted to be around people that knew a lot more than me, because I wanted to know what they knew. Like I started to bother me, like, wait. There's people out there getting, there's people out there, um, you know, one of my good friends to this day was this kid, Danny Vera, who around this time I was fortunate enough to meet him. He ended up being the second youngest at the time, the second youngest person to ever graduate with a PhD from MIT. And I just remember I would just spend hours talking about mathematics with the man. I'd be like, just teach this to me, and we talk about theoretical stuff and practical things, and it was incredible. But yeah, I just wanted to be around people, and I just realized, it's when you don't grow up in a family where college is sort of just the thing that you do. It's automatic. It's just, of course, that's what you do. You go to college, you go to school, you go to college. It's like it doesn't feel so real to me. It felt like a far off idea. But yeah, by surrounding myself with people who are doing that, I met other friends. Then I developed other friends, Robert Colson and Matt Ansel and Amy Parker. These people who were getting like PhDs. I just started hanging around a bunch of PhDs. It was inspiring to me. Like, look at these people doing something, like really learning, man, really digging into like their interests. It was just beautiful. It was one of the best times in my life.
So to that point about surrounding yourself with these other individuals, these people that are not only pouring into you, but also almost in a way providing mentorship and showing you a different path. At that time, did you find that you were having to change existing relationships that you had with other people that were maybe keeping you at a certain level where you were trying to go to the next level?
Yeah, and that was a difficult thing to negotiate, especially at a young age. Like, especially like most people looked at me and just didn't, I'm talking, I'm 15, 16, 17, and my friends, who would have been my friends coming up, were sort of not understanding what I was doing. Like, wait, so you're at community college and you're hanging out with PhDs and you're hanging out at, like campus libraries. Like, what is going on? Like, we're not like, and that age, you're immature enough that I think probably even into adulthood, it can be hard to communicate boundaries to people in your life, but especially hard at that age. And so, yeah, it was a little tricky, but I definitely had to, I knew I had to, certain people I cut off. I'm sure I cut off certain people, but mostly I tried to just communicate that, this isn't about you guys. You guys do what feels right for you, but this is where I need to be. I'm thriving. I didn't feel good before, so I need to kind of be where I feel good and where I feel understood and where I feel like I can grow. And so yeah, but yeah, it's like, how can you? But it's so funny, and like I remember at a certain point, people in my family asking me, like, well, what if this doesn't work? Like, what if this school thing doesn't work? And it was like, and again, that goes back to like, but I didn't know enough then to be like, of course it works. That's how it works. Like, you go to the school, look at there's a process. But you couldn't explain. I couldn't explain it because I hadn't experienced it yet. They certainly hadn't. But I knew. I was like, this is gonna work. This is gonna work. Of course it's gonna work. I have nothing else anyways, so this has to work. But it's just funny, man. Like, when you're not around it, you don't have the language, you don't have the experience. When you don't have the experience, you don't have the language to explain why this is going to work and how it's going to work. And so, yeah, you got to be around the people who are doing it.
Yeah, no, that's that. I love that. That's fantastic. So fast forward a bit further, you're in UC, you get into UC Berkeley, and which is fantastic. What a great school. So you get your undergrad at UC Berkeley, and then you also get your master's at UC Berkeley. And so talk about how you then land your, let's say, your first professional job that starts to build your career.
Yeah. So, man, goodness. So I'm at Berkeley as an undergrad. And, it's really, it's college is it's just like, I felt so accomplished getting into a university, getting into Berkeley of all universities. It just felt like, whoa, um and so there was sort of the feeling of like, all right, I've arrived, I've done, this is it, like, and it's sort of what my life to that point had been building to. And so when I got there, I was so focused on just kind of getting through it that I realized, like, wait, I started to realize towards the end of my time, like, there's a whole other chapter to this, which is like, what do I do after this? Where does this take me? What am I going to do for a career? Yeah, right. There's the rest of my life. Like, what am I going to be building towards? And, it was just, you start to look around and, like I'm reminded of, I feel like most kids it's not uncommon for someone to feel lost after undergrad. I'm reminded of the movie The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman. Plastics, you got to get into plastics. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started applying to banking jobs. I didn't know the first thing about banking or what it meant, but I applied to corporate jobs at Bank of America and Wells Fargo, and like some startup banks in the Bay Area. I didn't even know. I was applying to startups. I was applying to be the front desk person at yoga studios. And what I realized was, like, essentially being in and around the Bay Area, like, a Berkeley degree is a dime a dozen. It wasn't going to get me very far. So I went back home, tail between my legs, and I started reaching out to producers at different radio and TV shows that I enjoyed. Because by that point, I had written a couple articles for the East Bay Express in the Bay Area that I gotten paid for. And so I was like, well, that's the only thing so far in this life I've gotten paid to do. Let me try to do some more of that. But when I moved home, I started reaching out to producers for TV and radio shows I liked. The one producer I heard back from was this guy, Joe Zephron, Jay-Z, who worked for, called him not Jay-Z, but we called him Jay-Z. And he worked for Tavis Smiley. And so for Tavis Smiley's PBS show and his PRI show, Public Radio International. So yeah, I ended up working with Tavis Smiley and Cornel West, and really honing my radio chops and my broadcast chops. So
let me ask you something about that experience. So you were with Tavis for a relatively short period of time,
yeah.
But in that time that you were with him, if you were to think back, if you had to identify one big key idea or one big key lesson that you learned directly from him that just either rocked your world or at least said, this is something that I need to pay attention to, that I can use, that I'm going to carry forward, what would that message or what would that idea be?
Two key things came out of my time working with Tavis. One was, the most important one, I feel like, being, this is fun. I can't believe I could get paid to do this. If I could get paid to do this, great. Like, this is it. And two, it was just, don't shrink from big moments. Really don't worry if you don't think you can do something. Just try to do it. Like, just close your eyes and jump. Because, after a couple of weeks there, I got thrown what to me felt like the biggest assignment I could possibly have, which was to write a whole 1 hour radio special for Tavis Smiley. I had never done anything like that. I'd written for, a weekly. I hadn't written for radio. I didn't have much radio experience. I had seen Tavis Smiley, but it's not like I had never written an hour-long thing for another person. I felt like I got thrown. I felt like I had to write all of a sudden the State of the Union for the president or something. It felt like I felt sick. But I sat down and I did it. And what you realize is there's a process. They're not going to let you fail. They're not going to throw you an hour-long special to write if they think you can't do it, and two, if they know they can't fix whatever you screw up. So what I got from was that is, take every opportunity thrown your way. Don't shrink in the moment and learn what you can from it. Like, and I also learned from that experience when I did turn a script in, like, how key writing, when you're a producer, when you're doing that sort of thing, how key writing in the other person's voices. Because what I turned in was much more likely what I would say And so then, you know, I went through and I redrafted it and made it much closer to what Tavis Smiley might say. And it ended up being one of like my proudest sort of accomplishments at that time. I remember being thrilled and just really feeling like, wow, and I really love this medium. I love journalism. Like, this is what I'm gonna do, you know?
That is so brilliant. And I
Yeah.
love that lesson. Don't shrink from the big moments. That's incredibly powerful. And I thank you for sharing the story around that, because I know
Yeah.
for our audience that they can take that, they can imagine what you were going through, and they may have had similar moments in their own lives or will have similar moments. And to
Yeah.
be able to take that lesson and know that even if you don't have it all figured out, even if you have no idea how you're going to pull it off, just do it, right? Take one
Just do
step
it.
and then the next step and then the next.
That's it. One foot in front of the other, man. And I've often realized I'm not religious really by any means. I'm not, you know, but w- w- I always think about, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X was a formative book in my formative years. And in that book, Malcolm says, take one step out towards Allah and Allah will take two towards you. Take God out of that, whatever it is, take one step towards whatever it is you want to do. And I do believe things happen, things start to multiply, you know, very quickly.